Welcome to the April the 3rd, 1990 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you our history tape number 117. And we're so excited today for this history tape to bring you some longtime residents of Grand Prairie who came from other areas and settled in Grand Prairie and are still making history in our city. We're delighted to welcome Mr. and Mrs. Lloyd Fowler. Lloyd, we're so glad to have you on the show today. Wonderful. And Jewel, welcome to the show. Now, this is a very exciting time for us as we document your genealogy, Lloyd. First of all, we'd like to start with you, and if you'd look out into your camera and tell us about your parents. Give us their names and maybe some facts about when they came to Texas and where they lived and what he did for a living and all of that good stuff. Would you do that?
I sure will. My dad was Roy Fowler, Roy Columbus, and he passed away a few years ago at the age of 79. Okay. He came from Cleburne, Texas, and my mother was born in Texas, and she was born in Milam County.
All right.
And
what was her full name?
Leslie Maggie Thompson.
Okay. All right. And how did they get together? She came from Milam County, and he lived down near Cleburne, and they met. And what did he do?
Well, that's an interesting story, Ruthie. My dad was he worked on a farm.
All right.
And he hadn't gone to college. He hadn't received any degree and things. So he chopped cotton and plowed. So he was working out on the farm of my grandfather, Thompson. And of course, my mother, Maggie, Leslie Maggie, kind of eyeballed him, I called him. And she looked at her and she looked at him.
All right.
And that's how that got started. And they held hands and so forth. So that's about as much as I know about that.
But they were both worked on the farm.
Yep.
And where did they marry? In the Cleburne area?
They married in the Ellis County area.
Okay, all right. And did they settle in Ellis County?
Yes.
What community did they settle in?
In Palmer.
Down in Palmer, Texas.
Yeah.
Is that a real little town?
Well, at that time it was about 500 people, and it's a little bit larger now.
All right. And when they settled in Palmer, Texas, well then the family that was born to them, we'd like for you to give that genealogy and tell us the set that went with you and all of your little brothers and sisters.
Well, now, let's see if I followed your question now.
All right.
Of course, my dad and mother, they both lived there in Palmer, and I had three, I got one brother, deceased.
All right, give us his name.
His name is Thompson.
All right.
And
Thompson Fowler.
Thompson Fowler.
Okay, that's wonderful. Name for your mother's people, wasn't it?
That's right.
All right, now let's go to the next one.
And the next one would be my oldest sister, which is Mary Louise. She was named after my grandmother. Her name was Mary Louise.
All right.
Namesake.
All right, and when she married, what was her name then? Mary Louise?
Fowler.
Fowler, and then Walker?
Walker, her name now.
Okay.
Lives in Dallas.
She lives in Dallas.
My next sister would be Wilhelmina.
Okay.
And I believe I mentioned to you that named after a battleship. I assume that's correct. My uncle was in the Navy, and he named her.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
And the next sister, Ruth Bassford, she's deceased as of 5, 6, 7 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. I'm not too sure. Okay. I should know.
All right.
And I believe that's all my brothers and sisters.
All right. Now, if you were born down in the Palmer area, did you go to school in Palmer?
Yes, I did. I was born May the 3rd, 1913.
All right.
That tells you how old I am.
That's good.
And I went to school at Palmer. My first grade school teacher was Sadie Grimes. And at that time, they had 11 grades. Didn't have a 12th. When you got through 11th, you graduated. I did graduate.
Okay. And the class of
1931.
1931. That was a good year, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
All right. While you were in school in Palmer, you mentioned your first grade teacher. Were there any other teachers that really impressed you or that said, Lloyd, you can really do a good job, or that you sort of got an inspiration from?
I'm sure that I could name them all, but I won't, because there's a bunch of them.
All right.
I'll say a bunch. It's just a good number. There's Mississippi Grimes the first, and then I had Mr. Limber was Limber was the principal.
Oh, good.
W.D. Pollen was the superintendent, and he was called Bulldog. He had a bulldog face, and he was mean.
He made you boys walk a chalk line?
Yeah. We thought he was mean.
All right.
Of course, he was a good guy.
When you were growing up at Palmer School, were you known as one of the Peck's bad boys, or were you a good boy, or were you an athlete, or whatever else? Give us some classification.
Good. I'm glad you asked that question. I was an athlete. I played baseball, and I ran track. I ran the 100-yard dash, and I was coming in first. I looked around at my opponent, and he went around me. If I'd turned my head, I'd beat him. I never will forget that day.
We don't look back, do we?
Don't look back.
Oh,
that was out in Waxahachie at the track meet.
Okay.
And I enjoyed the athletes. I played all during my school year. And I was a little musician. I played the guitar. I bought me a $5 guitar, and I learned to play it myself. I taught myself.
Oh, you did? And did you do all this when you were a teenager?
Well, I was 10 years old.
You were 10 years old
when they bought the guitar. I started out rather young.
Well, did you ever perform when you were a young man with your guitar?
Oh, yes. After I got a little older, well, I joined a little band called the Musical Night Owls. At that time, I was about 17 or 18.
All right.
I was still single. And we played over a radio station, WRR, in Dallas.
Oh, you were at the big time then, weren't you?
Oh, yeah. Now, let me say this. We didn't make a lot of money. The fact being, we didn't make any. We did it all in the house.
Oh, well, that was good. That was wonderful.
But we had a big time doing so.
All right. We're going to let you rest a minute, Lloyd, and we're going to get with Jewel. We want to find out about Jewel a little bit.
She can out-talk me. Go ahead.
She can out-talk you, number one. Okay. Jewel, would you look out into your camera? And we'd like for you to tell us about your family. Give us their names of your mother and father, or maybe even your grandparents, if you'd like to.
I can't tell you too much about my grandparents because my granddaddy died when I was 2.
All right.
And my grandmother died when I was 14. My daddy's name was Algie Sidney Buchanan.
All right.
And my mother's name was Maud Ann Hamilton. And I had 2 brothers and 1 sister. My oldest brother, Elbridge, is deceased. My sister, Lennis, is in a nursing home in Irving. Then when I was...
And your other brother, you had 1 other brother?
When I was 10 years old, this little baby came along.
Wonderful.
I was a baby until then. And that was Sidney, named after my daddy.
Okay. And Sidney then was certainly the baby boy of the family, wasn't he?
Right.
Oh.
My oldest brother was 19 when Sidney was born, so we really thought having a baby was something.
All right. Now, Jewel, where were you born? And if you want to tell us when, you can.
I was born in Sterrett, Texas, May the 21st, 1918.
Okay. And Sterrett, Texas is in what county?
Ellis.
It's in Ellis County. Okay. And what did your parents do for a living?
My dad owned the telephone exchange at Rocket and had that for many years.
Now tell me about Rocket. Where is Rocket?
Rocket is on a farm to Market Road, 813, between Prairie and Waxahachie.
And so he owned that telephone exchange and kept all of the lines up and all that.
Right.
All right. And did his kids help him do this, or did he do this just as the father of the family?
Well, being raised in a telephone office, we learned to take care of the switchboard young. So we helped.
That is wonderful. All right. And where did Jewel go to school?
I went to school at Rocket for 10 years.
All right.
And they only had 10 grades there then. And then I was bused to Ferris, where I graduated.
All right, and what was your graduating class from Prairie High School?
1936.
1936, okay. And all of the time you were going to school at Rocket and at Ferris, were there any real special teachers that you'd like to mention in this documentary that really helped you to excel or encouraged you or that you'd like to remember?
I had one teacher named Pauline Hankins, and I thought she was about the prettiest thing I ever saw, and just tried to do everything she wanted me to do.
Mm-hmm. Tried to please her.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. All right, and when you graduated from high school, then what happened to Jewel?
Well, I stayed home 2 years, and then I married my husband.
All right. Now, Lloyd, that brings you front and center. I want to know on this documentary how you met Jewel.
Well, that'd be very embarrassing if I couldn't answer that, wouldn't it?
It sure would.
So I better think up something quick.
Think up something real good.
Well, I'll tell you, it's like this, Brucey. I played the guitar, and I had a friend that lived across the street from Joe. He played the mandolin. He was older than I. And I would go up and visit and spend the night. One night, I think I spent a week up there.
All right.
And of course, while I was playing the guitar, she was walking across the road and to see me. Mm-hmm. And I finally I walked across the road to see her, back and forth. Mm-hmm. And we courted for a number of months, even not too many years now. Uh-huh. But that was in Rocket now, that little town, Rocket.
Okay.
And it didn't do much running around. I had a Model T Ford. Mm-hmm. And do you know what a Model T Ford is?
You bet.
I had a coupe.
Uh-huh.
And, usually when the girls went riding with you, they didn't sit away on the other side. They sat kind of in the middle, and I sat over with the driver. Mm-hmm. Pretty close together,
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what you call courting in a Model T.
Courting in a Model T. That is wonderful. And you all finally decided to get married, and where'd you get married?
Well, at Waxahachie.
Went to Waxahachie and
married by a Church of Christ preacher in Waxahachie. I don't recall his name right now, but Jill does know it.
Okay, now, what were you doing for a living at this time you proposed to her besides playing the guitar?
Working in a tailor shop.
Working in a tailor shop, and you got your training in a tailor shop. Where was the tailor shop?
Palmer.
At Palmer, Texas. Okay.
Of course, I did some other little jobs too, such as chopping cotton and plowing, and jobbing around like that. Didn't make a lot of money, but didn't take a lot of money then.
All right.
Would you believe it? I could take a quarter and have a pretty good little feast on Saturday. I could buy me a nickel hamburger, a nickel cold drink, a peanut patty, and have a dime left.
That's right, or go to the movie, didn't you?
Yeah, I did go to the movie.
Oh, you bet.
It cost a dime.
All right. That sounds like a wonderful time on just a little bit of money. Now, you and Jewel married, and then you started your life in and around Palmer. Then what happened to Lloyd and Jewel?
Okay, now...
Where'd you go from there?
There were some war years in between this, but now when we were married, well, we moved around, Ruthie. Back in those days, I don't know whether you did it like this or not, but we moved from town to town. We moved to Corsicana, moved down to Ennis, and those smaller towns. And just jobbing around. If got me a job, I'd move down where I worked,
That's good.
And finally, I settled down in Palmer, got married, moved in with my folks, and let them furnish the groceries for a little while.
That happens now and then, doesn't it? All right, Jewel, tell us about your children. Now, Lloyd's gotten you married, and we've waited a respectable time, so tell us about your children and name them, please.
Sharon, the oldest girl, was born 4 years after we married.
Where?
She's born in Dallas.
All right, okay.
And Sharon and her family live in Duncanville.
Give us their full name.
Sharon and Joe Ellis.
Okay.
And they have 3 children, Melissa, Michelle, and Monica.
Okay.
Now, Melissa, the oldest one, is married to Bradley Hopkins, and they have our great-grandbaby who's 2.5 years old.
Would you give us the great-grandbaby's name?
Brantley Dean Hopkins. Dean is after his granddaddy,
Oh, well, that is,
great-granddaddy.
that is great. All right, now that we've gotten one of your daughters. Now, how about the rest of your family?
Well, Judy married Harold Fowler of Grand Prairie, and they live in Duncanville. And Judy works in a church over in Duncanville. And she has 2 children, Jason Dean,
All right.
and Amy Diane. And Jason has his first car. He's 17.
Oh, that is wonderful. That is some grandson then, isn't it? All right, now how about your final child, George?
Well, George lives in Austin.
Okay.
He had a broken marriage, and his 2 little girls lived in Austin. So that's the reason he wants to live in Austin, close to the grandchildren.
All right, name his 2 children.
Rachel Delana Fowler and Martha Jewel Fowler.
Oh, that is wonderful. That is great. The namesake for grandmother, right? That is great.
And we're like for them to come up because we don't get to see them as often as we do the Duncanville grandchildren.
Yes, because they live nearby, don't they? Okay. Now, Joel, let's transfer over to Lloyd a minute. Lloyd, whatever brought you to Grand Prairie, Texas, and about what year?
Okay, the war, like I said, the war years was whenever the defense plant, they call it the defense plant in the beginning. So I got a job out there doing some welding, aluminum welder.
All right.
Got paid 65 cents per hour. I thought that was a pretty good salary.
That sounds good.
Yeah, then, of course, it wouldn't be too much now. And I worked out there until I got drafted out into the war. I went overseas, went to Germany.
In what service?
Army.
Into the Army, okay.
U.S. Under General Patton.
All right.
And you know what they called him? He was
Yes.
kind of rough.
He was rough, wasn't he?
And it's true that he was. He wasn't afraid of anything. As far as bullets, he'd ride a Jeep right down through those German towns. It didn't duck his head when the bullets were flying.
All right, now while you were in the service, did Jewel still live in Grand Prairie, Texas?
No, she lived she lived in home down in Rocket for a while and kind of shifted around.
All right.
And I believe I'm right in saying that. Not all the time did she stay down there, but a lot of the time.
All right, and when you got out of the service, what year did you get out of the service, and then where'd you go?
Well, I got my job back in another defense. It wasn't called defense plant; it was called a war plant. I went back to my old job.
At North American Aviation?
North American, that's what it was.
All right, okay.
In welding.
You're back in the welding department?
Yeah, didn't have a bit of trouble getting a job.
All right.
And connected with all this, so well, I had to have a place to live, so Romy Stewart over in Avon Village.
All right.
Got us a house within 15 minutes. We walked in there and she said, "I'll get you a house, Mr. Fowler." Got me I believe it's maybe a 2-bedroom. And later on we got qualified for a 3-bedroom and so on as we got some more children. But that was called Avon Village, and it's still there.
Oh, it sure is, isn't it? And then after you settled at North American and after the war was over and contract termination, then what did Lloyd do?
Well, I got me a job selling pots and pans.
Okay.
Wherever. You ever heard of that?
Heard of that. Okay.
And he cooked without water.
All right.
But I didn't get rich, but I managed to hold my job.
All right. What are you doing now? Are you retired or are you still...
I'm retired. I'm a fuller brush salesman.
Oh, well, you're not really retired,
No.
are you?
Oh, no. And I play the guitar.
Okay.
I teach.
Oh, you teach the guitar now?
Oh, yeah. I have adults and have kids alike.
Okay, we're going
And have been for about 12, 15 years at my house.
At your home.
Yeah.
Your students come there and they
Yeah,
learn to
that's
play
right.
the guitar.
30-minute classes.
All right, we're going to let you rest a minute. Jewel, all of this time after the war or during the war, what did Jewel do? Did you ever work out of the home?
No, and I didn't work till my baby was 9 years old.
Okay.
And I went to work at Sanger Harris in their beauty salon. And after I quit Sanger Harris after about 15 years, well, I retired when LD did.
Uh-huh.
And then I went to work for the Greenhouse, the beauty spa out here at Arlington. And I worked 10 years for them in the manicuring department. So it was an interesting job because you get to meet so many people from all over the United States.
You've met lots of celebrities, I know.
Right.
Oh, that is great. That is a wonderful life. All right, now, would you like to tell us a little bit maybe about your church work or your hobby like this?
Yes, I would. It's most interesting to write a story in a little Palmer Rustler. I'm looking at one in front of me here.
All right, now let's just hold up the Palmer Rustler. We've got to show everyone out here that you do an article. Is this a weekly paper?
Weekly paper.
Uh-huh, and right here you've written one that says, by Lloyd Fowler, that says Old Age. Oh, and this is the Palmer Rustler from Palmer, Texas.
I've got one coming out this next week called Down Memory Lane, which gets down way back from the first grade in school right on down.
Okay,
You know,
whatever started Lloyd Fowler to writing for the Palmer Rustler, and how long you been doing this good stuff?
Well, when I worked at the defense plant, I wrote an article for that little paper they had out there. I forget the name of the paper. It came out. It's a slick paper. And I wrote some stuff in that. I don't know, I just like to write.
Well, how long you been doing this for the Palmer Rustler?
About 15 years.
15 years. And do you write these articles and mail them in, or do you take them to Palmer?
I type them at double space, I type it, and I send it to a girl that looks after she's editor down there. She sends it on down to Ennis to the Ennis Daily News. And it gets forwarded on down to their office, and it's printed. Never had it always gets through. I never had a flyback yet.
Oh, that is great. All right, now tell us a little bit more about this guitar business.
Oh, yes. I enjoyed playing so well that I had friends that would come in, and we'd sing together. And a little boy down the street, his parents said, "Well, you teach my son how to play the guitar." I said, "Well, I'll try it." So I took on a student, and I think I charged him maybe $10 or $15 a month to show him once a week. And it kind of snowballed. He told somebody else, and that somebody else told somebody else. And it kept on, and at one time I had 25 students, but it was more than I could handle. So I had to drop back. I have about 10 now. That's it. And of course, I have a fee, and I charge a fee, you know. They're glad to pay it. It's it's something good for the kids to learn how to play the guitar, because I don't say it keeps them off the street, but it's a good hobby. And as far as church work now, of course, you might have mentioned that a while ago. I believe you did. I remember the Church of Christ, have been all through the years here in Grand Prairie. I remember when we were at Fourth and Church. I served as a deacon, and a little later on, I was honored with being an elder. And I've got a lot of friends that are still in the church. It's Turnpike now, of course.
Okay.
And it's grown a lot. And my church work was really great. I enjoyed it. And it's still good.
Still important to you. All right, now, Jewel, what is it like to have a young man in the family that's supposed to be retired, but here he brings all of these people into the house to learn to play the guitar. And how do you manage all of that good stuff? Do you help, or do you run another way, or whatever?
Well, I had to adjust, because at first he taught in our living room. And so finally we cleaned out a bedroom, and I gave him a bedroom to teach.
So now he has his bedroom studio.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is wonderful. Lloyd, if you had some young people in the audience that you wanted to give them some advice, either about writing for the paper or playing the guitar, or what they ought to do nowadays to try to shape up and live right, what would you say to them? We have about a minute and a half or 2 minutes.
I'd say get occupied with something they like. If they enjoy reading, well, do a lot of reading and writing. If they can write a story, and contact the paper and let them print it. And you have to kind of step out and put that forward. You know, you can't just hold back. That's the way I did. I kind of imposed on good nature, I guess, and I said, look here, I want you to, I'm going to write a story, I want you to print it. That might not have been the word, but that's the way it went. So I would suggest any young person get occupied in music or anything that would be on the good side of life, and of course that's the only side, the best side.
Tell her about your nursing home music.
Tell us about your nursing home music. We have about a minute. Come on, tell us about that.
I'll go real fast.
You bet.
For the last 10 years, I've been playing at a nursing home here in Grand Prairie up on Prairie Road.
All right.
Called the Dalworth Care Center.
All right.
And a lot of those people are 100 years old. Mm-hmm. Maybe not a whole lot of them, but there are a few right at it.
And how often do you go to the Dalworth Care Center to play?
Well, tonight, we play tonight. I play once a month.
Uh-huh.
I play the bass guitar.
Mm-hmm. And is there a group of you that go up and play?
Yes, I play with a band. It's called a bluegrass band. They live in Arlington, and they let me play along with them. I mean, they need the bass, so I have the pleasure of playing. And as I said, we do play tonight. We play for 1 hour.
That is wonderful. That's a wonderful community service that you do, Lloyd Fowler. Not only that, but to keep in touch with Palmer and your roots, and to really single out some young boys and girls to help them in their musical career. I think it's wonderful you do that, and yet you take in the people that are senior citizens too. And I know that Jewel aids and abets you, and Jewel, we appreciate you so much, because I know you tolerate a lot when you see that he gets to all of these places and looks as nice as he does today. And I want to thank y'all for being on the show today.
I repeat, it's been my pleasure, and I wouldn't, as bad as I need money, I wouldn't take $500 for it, but don't offer me $500.
And this is Ruthie Jackson letting you know and reminding you that history is as we live and do.